What's up, YouTube? Your girl is back with another video, and today we are making candy apples. This is just going to be the base recipe. I will show you guys how to decorate it like I did in the video, but let's get into it. Okay, so we use a Granny Smith apple because you want to offset the sweetness of the candy itself. So you're going to start with your apples. You're going to pick all the stems from them. And you see all the dirt inside. We're going to get all of that disgustingness out of the apples. So you want to pick up all your stems. And then you're going to get a medium to large pot. And you're going to need a mesh strainer to hold the apple and actually dip it around in, because you can't do it with your fingers. So once the pot is boiling, I also added a little bit of white vinegar. You're going to swoosh around your apple for anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds. I recommend 10 seconds because it really gives the apple a chance to get all of the wax off of this. So we do this because the wax on the apple causes ugly little bubbles. So you're going to repeat this process until all your apples have been cleaned. So you swoosh it around for about 10 seconds. And then once you take it out of the pot, you want to wipe the apple clean and make sure that all of the wax came off. Now you need to do this after every apple. Do not put the apple aside and try and come back and wipe the apple off. Not a good idea, okay? So again, you want to swish the apple around for 10 to 15 seconds, and then you're going to take it out and you're going to wipe them. Now, I needed these apples for the next day, so I did the ice method, which was after I wiped it down. I put it in a large area of water, of ice water, and what this does is stop the apple from cooking inside. And later on in the video, I'll show you why. But I needed to speed up that process and stop the apple from cooking. So I just placed it in an ice bath and it will get the job done. I had to add an ice pack to my water to ensure that it was nice and ice cold. So it's been about 15 minutes. And I let my apples sit for a little bit. So now I'm just wiping them dry again with another clean rag. And I have my handy dandy cookie sheet. And this just makes it easier for me to transport the apples. So I'm going to wipe them down and place them downward with the top of the apple to the bottom. I guess that really doesn't matter. That's just my craziness of doing things. So yeah. In this video, I think I made about like 15 to 16 apples. So we're going to repeat that process, wiping it down and making sure that they're all dry before placing it on the cookie sheet. And as you can tell, the apples are not as shiny as they would be when you first take them out of the pack. And I'm going to show you why that's important. So we let our apples sit for 24 hours minimum. And later on in the video, I'll show you why you don't want to dip them directly after you do this process. It's not a good situation. So just leave them in a dry, cool area for at least 24 hours for them to dry. So this is exactly why we wash our apples. So all of that white gunk is the wax and dirt from off of the apples. Look how disgusting the water is after you clean apples. So even if you're not making candy apples, just eating fruit in general, please wash your fruits and vegetables. This is why. Like, this is disgusting. So it's been 24 hours since we've cleaned our apples. And as you can see, they have a little condensation on them. And this is why you don't want to dip directly after, because these little wet spots will eat away at your candies and they will cause pinholes in your candy apples. Okay, so let it sit, and this is the condensation I was telling you guys about. That's our ice bath sped up this process just a little bit, because normally I would let the apple sit for a few days. So we're going to get a wet napkin and we're going to have a dry napkin as well. So you're going to wipe the apple down with the wet napkin first, And then you're going to go behind that with the dry napkin and make sure all of that condensation is wiped off. Now, I do recommend putting the apples on a brand new cookie sheet because you don't want any of that stuff that you're wiping off to get back on the apple. So at this step, I wipe down each and every apple, and then I insert the sticks as I'm doing so. And then we'll get ready for dipping. While I'm doing this process, I do have to change my dry rag, I would say at least twice, because it will eventually become wet, and you don't want a wet apple. You want to ensure that it is nice and dry. So once you see that your dry napkin is getting too wet, you want to go ahead and replace it with a brand new dry napkin. Make sure you guys are putting your finger inside the hole of the apple, and because holes or pinholes can form at the top of the apple and it'll eat away at your candy. So always take your finger and kind of brush on the inside of the apple as you're wiping them down. Okay, so my apples have been wiped off, and they all have sticks inserted in them. So notice when I was putting the sticks inside the apples, I never hold the apple and put the stick inside. I always sit the apple flat and then insert the stick. So we do this for presentation purposes. You don't want, like, if you even if you turn the apples, you see how this stick is going this way. So whenever your client sets up their table, you want it uniform and you want all the sticks sticking up straight. So you want to always make sure if your apple is flat, you can maintain that straight stick because you control how it goes down in it. But if you do it while it's in your hand, you can't guarantee that you'll have sticks that stick straight up. So you always want to lay the apple flat before inserting the sticks. So now it's time to make our candy, and then it's gonna be time to dip these. So this recipe is super simple. All you need is granulated sugar and light corn syrup. Now this is the instance where I do have to be a bit bougie. I don't trust any other brand of light corn syrup, because Karo is just the amount of, like, it's thick but it's still loose. And from experience using any other Karo syrup, it was just very watery, and you need that thickness for the candy to come together. So I play it safe, and I always use Karo syrup. You can use whatever your preference is, but this is just my way of doing things. So you need Karo syrup, sugar, and you're gonna need water. And of course, in the description box below, I will leave the exact measurements to this recipe. And because the apples are so big, we are actually going to be a little more than doubling the recipe. So I'm gonna double the recipe, and then I'm gonna also half it. So you want to make sure that when you are adding your dry ingredients that you use a dry measuring cup. So this is my 1 cup. You always want to make sure that you use that, and then you want to use your liquid for your water and for your corn syrup. So don't ever put your sugar inside of the liquid measuring cup to measure what you need. Always use the liquid cup for the liquid, and then the dry cup for your sugar. So we are going to start this recipe by adding our sugar first. I also used the half a cup. Like I said, I was going to basically double this recipe and then also add another half of the recipe, just to ensure that all of my apples are coated evenly, because you don't want to run out of candy and have a half coated apple. That's just tacky. So the first thing we're going to do is add our sugar. So in this recipe, I used 7.5 cups of sugar. Again, I will leave the base recipe in the description box below, so you can just use what is necessary for you. But in this instance, I needed a big pot of candy to make sure these big apples were coated. So next we're going to add our water. And then we're going to follow the water by adding in our light corn syrup. Now, it doesn't matter, the order in which you pour the stuff into the pot. That does not matter. So once you get everything into the pot, using the spatula to wipe down your measuring cup, you want to make sure all of that, majority, I would say all if you can, but majority of the corn syrup actually makes it inside of the pot. And then you want to give this all a stir. As you can see, it's very, very thick at first because the water in the corn syrup has not dissolved with the sugar. So at first it's going to be kind of thick, but once you're able to move it around, then you're ready for your color. So this is our white gel. It's basically like white food coloring. You need this because your candy at first is very translucent, okay? So if you make your candy like this, or if you add color to this, you will still be able to see the apple through that color. So you're going to add about 2 tablespoons of the white icing, which is white food coloring. You can find it at Michael's, you can find it at Joann's, and your cake supply aisle. And then you want to stir this around, and we're going to make sure that this is a solid color. All of that see-through translucent candy, you want to mix it around very, very well and make sure that you get a good base before you add your color. And you want to make sure that this is solid because your candy can still be a little shallow. So today I'm making blue apples. Now you always want to start with a little first, especially when you're making delicate colors like light colors. So I just used 1 drop. And when you're using gel coloring, you want to mix it around very, very good because it's very hard to dissolve. And the last thing you need, especially when you're making apples for a client, is to have streaks of the gel when you go to dip your apple, and it doesn't look good in the candy. So you want to stir the hell out of this color, and then if it's not the color that you're going for, you just add a drop more, and then you stir it around. And you want to add a little at a time because you can always add more, but you cannot take away. So I think I only used 2 drops to get the color that I desired. And again, I stirred it and stirred and stirred and stirred until I did not see any more of the gel floating around in my candy. So I have achieved, again, the color that I desire. I'm going for that very light blue because we will turn these into Elsa-inspired apples. So once you get the candy to your desired color, you're going to move it over to the stove and you're going to crank that baby up on high heat. Now, I cook my apples almost to the highest heat the stove allows me to. So when cooking candy apples, you want to use a very large pan because as the temperature rises, the candy will rise. And if your pot is not tall enough, it will boil over, and that will be a hot, sticky mess on your stove. So here I have added our candy thermometer. I personally love the digital candy thermometer versus the one that slides down. It's just a more accurate read. So like I said, this is on high heat, and about after 10 to 15 minutes or so, we are at 237 degrees. Our target is 302 degrees. It has to reach 302 in order to reach the crack stage, and that's the stage that you want your candy to be at. So at 260, you can kind of see the candy kind of changing textures, is getting a little bit thicker, and that candiness is actually coming together. So after your candy reaches 302 degrees, it's time to dip. So always you want to wait until your bubbles kind of stop bubbling, and you want to wait until the candy solution settles. Now, never in my years of making candy apples has my mixture thickened up on me to the point that I couldn't dip. You want your Candy should be able to move around your apple just like this, basically just like water. So you're dipping, and you want to shake off any excess because you don't want coasters, is what I call coasters, at the bottom of your apples. It's just tacky. So yes, your wrist will hurt, your fingers will hurt, but you want to drip and let the apple stay up until you don't get any more drippage from the bottom. I'm using a cookie sheet to place the apples on after. They don't stick, and after the candy sets, it comes right up with no problem. So you're going to dip and dip and dip, and like I said, we made extra candy because all of our apples will be coated. You will not be able to see any of the apple skin with these apples. We're not doing that, okay? So we need our apples to be presentable and classy, and that's what we're doing. So we're dipping apples. And you guys, I've been dipping for a minute, and my candy is still very loose. It's not thick. It's not hard to turn my apple in. So if you follow this recipe correctly, you should be able to achieve the same thing. I'm still dipping, and my candy is still very manageable, not difficult at all to work with. So this is the end result to us dipping the apples. As you can see, it's nice and smooth, nice and shiny. You guys see my reflection in the apples. I didn't add anything extra for them to be shiny. This is what this recipe achieves. So I am going to take an extra step with these apples, and we're going to bling them out a little bit, but we're going to do it the edible way. So we're going to be adding sanding sugar. I have blue and silver sanding sugar mixed to add to these apples, and look how flawless that is. So, very critical step. Do not pour your candy when you're done with the pot down the drain. You want to add water to that pot, and you want to put it back on the stove and let the candy break down. So I'm using the steam from that cleaning process to kind of make my apple sticky, and this will make it very easy to apply our sanding sugar, and it'll stick right to it. So with the spoon, I'm just taking the sanding sugar and I'm rotating the apple around until the apple is evenly coated. Now, once you get those apples sticky, you want to make sure you also coat the bottom of your apples as well. So when you go to package them, you don't want the bottom of the apple to be sticky and it mess up the presentation inside the bag. So this is our ending product with dipping the apples in sanding sugar. And I went an extra step. I added fondant. I added Elsa toppers to the top. And if you guys want that step-by-step, please comment down below. And Elsa has cute little snowflakes on her dress, and I added tulle to make that tutu like dress effect that Elsa has. So yeah, this is the end result of our candy apple. So here is this candy table set up from my client's party. So thank you guys for tuning in to another video. If you want the step-by-step for decorating, please drop down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share if you can. And we will be back with another video very soon. I really hope you guys enjoyed this step-by-step on how to make candy apples. If you make this recipe, please let me know how it turns out. And we'll be back soon with another video.